COVID Long Hauler Self-Documentary Part 1. I just want to say up front that this project has nothing to do with my current role as a clinical dietitian with my current employer. Additional disclaimer, I'm not trying to treat, diagnose, or recommend anything that you should be doing if you have concerns that you have COVID or you've already had it with residual side effects. Please work with your healthcare provider. If you have mental health support needs, please reach out for resources and people in your community. I think it's so important that we open up and we discuss what we're experiencing as a community, and we all are really learning together, and it's more powerful when we share our stories. Most people ask, did I have any past medical history? At the age of 13, I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa. Mid-20s, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism and started thyroid medication. At the age of 28, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and started working on my mental health. Otherwise, I had no other medical history. My family, my father has diabetes. My grandmother had some manic depression, and my grandfather passed away of brain cancer. Otherwise, I was just very active and constantly trying to grow with my self-development and be the strongest human I could be for my family and for my community. At baseline is what we like to call it in the medical field. I'm a clinical dietitian. I've been in my role for about 4 years. I love wellness. I try to stay calm even though it's an intense work environment. I like to walk to work when I can for the exercise and mental health support. I exercise in the morning, I walk the dogs, I lift weights. The family reconnects after a long work day by walking the dog, and we try our best to get variety at our dinners, keep it healthy, and nourish our bodies well. I connect with my friends, even though there's restrictions. I know the importance of love and belonging and social time, and I try to meditate and do yoga and rest when my body asks for it. Insert COVID-19. On October 19th, I was diagnosed. I'm a frontline worker, and I was surprised that I didn't get it sooner when a lot of my other colleagues were getting it. But finally, in October, I came down with my symptoms. I have a podcast that details all the symptoms I experienced. I did not have to go into the hospital for oxygen support, but I did have all the other mild to moderate symptoms that, again, if you go to Spotify at my Self-Discovery podcast, you can listen to the entire description of my COVID experience and my 10-day quarantine. After my 10-day quarantine, I went back to work. I did have some shortness of breath, and I needed to rest a lot more. A 5-hour nap, and felt like each day maybe I was getting stronger, just still shortness of breath. During this time, I took a new role, and I was doing the same exact work as a clinical dietitian, but I transitioned to a different hospital. I noticed one day that I was cleaning my desk, and it was getting close to lunchtime, so I grabbed a couple handfuls of pretzels and felt like I was going to black out and pass out. I immediately sat down, kind of used my self-care tools, calming myself, drank some water, had some trail mix, and kind of recovered over the next 3 minutes. And just took mental note of that. Like maybe that was my fault, just having a couple handfuls of pretzels. That was not the best, well-balanced thing to put into my body. But my body's typically not that sensitive. I just didn't feel like myself. Fast forward, over the next 2 weeks in my new role, I was having episodes of feeling like I was going to pass out when I was interviewing patients, and my heart beating out of my chest. I reached out to my colleagues, and we all kind of were aware that COVID is having some very concerning side effects. And there's something called POTS syndrome, where your blood pressure is not regulated well and your heart can beat out of your chest. So we had some ideas of maybe what I was experiencing, but we thought, let's look at my thyroid medication, major self-care, a little more salt in the diet, and TLC. It seemed it was working well for me. I had to be super zen with my mindset and gentle on my body, but we had planned PTO that we weren't able to take the entire year as frontline workers, and finally was able to spend some time with loved ones and take some holiday vacation time. So we're off. I'm still practicing in my head, zen, breathing, calm, try not to trigger any episodes in my body. And I think it helped that on vacation I slept in, I moved my body gently, it was consistent warm temperature. I still had some weird residual side effects where I'm a deep thinker and I like to analyze things. I like to understand human behavior and emotions, but it was really intense. My thoughts were so deep and they were really intrusive and dark, and I've never experienced something so intense in my life. And while I'm on vacation, it just didn't align. So I continued just using self-care tools that I've learned over the years that I needed when I was dealing with my anxiety, and it balanced me enough. I didn't want to let my fiance down. We had really been struggling over this year, just like the entire world had been, and we really needed this vacation time. So I took care of myself the best I could, ate well, stayed hydrated, did gentle exercise, and to be honest, I didn't have a lot of episodes. Our vacation was, a little more than a week, and I had 2 episodes. One was mild, where it was just getting close to dinner time, and I think my body was telling me, like, I'm hungry. And so I just talked myself through it, but I took mental note, like, oh, I kind of felt like I was dizzy and I was faint. And then, oddly enough, when we were going through airport security, I had a whole trigger of the symptoms, heart beating out of my chest. So again, I took mental note, but I really didn't want to let David down. We made the best of it. We had fun. We just tried to kind of together make sure that we were doing our best to see family, to take some downtime and therapeutic time, but also try to be ourselves. Was it in my head? Was what I was experiencing real or not? I know that I had lost about 2 pounds since the experience, and, everything hadn't been too significant. But it was time to fly back to St. Louis, and I had an OBGYN appointment, but they weren't really the ones to help me best with the symptoms I was having. So with family support and colleagues' guidance, I reached out to primary care, which I'm a pretty healthy individual, so I needed to reestablish with a new primary care. It was really hard to get an appointment. It's just very difficult with so many people needing to see doctors that it took me several attempts to finally reestablish with primary care, and then also try to get in to see cardiology, some specialists with those side effects that were manifesting through my heart, which was quite concerning, and I was having daily episodes, and it was just getting exhausting. So I noticed that cold temperature really triggered my symptoms, where I'd feel really dizzy, feel like I was going to faint, so I could no longer walk to work with the cold, 30 degrees, 35 degree weather. So I was back at work for about a week and a half, really trying to manage my symptoms. But then finally, I'm trying to bring some humor into this pretty heavy content. Finally, I was like mermaid down. I can't balance myself at work anymore. It was like everything that I knew how to do was failing. I was freezing cold. I couldn't get warm. I was having symptoms of my heart beating out of my chest. We tried kind of slightly adjusting my thyroid medicine. And at work, the nurses were great. They did an EKG. They looked at my heart rate, and they're like, you know what, let's get you to urgent care and get you some evaluation, because it's just not safe right now. So at urgent care, I let them know about the episode when I was cleaning my office, and I had the handfuls of pretzels, and how I was feeling that day. I felt like I was hyperthyroid, like I was super sensitive to everything, light, sounds. I had no way to protect myself. I had no distress tolerance. It was like my whole body was just out of equilibrium, and I couldn't breathe. I was short of breath. My heart was beating out of my chest. My eyes were barely open. I had this extreme headache. I was still freezing. I was so nervous. I felt like I was dying. I hate to be so abrupt, but I literally felt like I might be dying. I didn't know what was going on in my body. So they ran tests and sent me home. The only thing that came back was that my thyroid was low. So I had to follow up with my primary care, and again, very difficult to get in. So I had to go about 4 or 5 days until I could see my primary care that Monday. And it was scary. I had intrusive thoughts. I wasn't myself. I was hot and cold, but no fever. Laying down, I was uncomfortable. I was short of breath. I just couldn't get to an equilibrium. Sitting up too long, I was short of breath. I had extreme fatigue, so I tried reducing my thyroid medicine, but then that bottomed me out. I had a racing mind. My neck was so tight. I had the worst headache. I was short of breath. My heart was burning at my chest bone and at my back. I started having swallowing difficulty, which I've never experienced. I was craving salts. I couldn't tolerate coffee. So I finally got to my primary care, and she told me it sounds like POTS syndrome, which you get the dizziness, the shortness of breath, the fatigue. And when you stand up, your blood pressure doesn't regulate correctly. So anytime I was going from my office to go interview the first patient, I would get that first intense episode, like I was going to faint and my heart was beating out of my chest. And it looks like this can affect a lot of areas in the body, your brain, your blood vessels, your digestion and absorption, your eyes, your mouth. So I made appointments with specialists, got out my book, and started taking notes. There's something known as dysautonomia, and it sounds really similar to what I'm struggling with. So I started listening to webinars at COVID Long Haulers support page and resources, which was really helpful. They started drawing my blood to look for any nutritional imbalances. And again, the thyroid was the major thing, a little low calcium, but nothing major on my nutrition panel. I finally got an appointment with cardiology the day that I went to urgent care. I was just like, I feel like I'm dying. I don't know what to do. And thank God they were able to get me in that next week. There is a lot of research coming out now that people are having abnormal echocardiograms, about 55% of the patients, which I think is so important that we look at this literature and try not to just read symptoms that you look online, but look for the research. There's literature reviews, there's case studies, there's webinars that specialists and physicians are starting to share, and it's important to do some research and look at what you're experiencing and talk to your specialists and your doctors about it. So my cardiologist did a workup on me, and it was an affirmation of some of the research that now is coming out of Europe since they were hit before us. And it shows that people 3 months out are having, 55% of the people are still having side effects. So they had me lay flat, and then they had me stand up and test my blood pressure and my heart rate. And my heart rate was well above where it should be for someone my age and fitness level. So my cardiologist said, this is abnormal. Your body's not regulating your blood pressure properly. Also, she noted that my body has heightened reactivity to all sensory input, which sounds like neurological, vascular. So she sent me home with a heart rate monitor to wear for 3 days. And then she potentially have to put me on a beta blocker or medication to help rebalance the blood pressure. So I'm home resting, learning, looking at resources and references, and have my awesome little sidekick to chill with and kind of keep me calm. But what I have learned is to still read my body. There's a position that you lay that keeps the blood flowing to the heart and the brain to really help reduce the side effects and the symptoms. It seems like such a simple thing, but just having that blood flowing can really help things. So there's a lot we're still learning. The darkness of the COVID and how the body is still healing. And I'm blessed to be able to be someone to share my personal experience. There's also COVID support groups that I still need to kind of read into this more that can help with some links of resources and videos. But I just hope if anyone else out there is experiencing things like I have been, that we can together learn and grow through this. I love this quote from the COVID Long Haulers support group. Stop what you are trying to do and listen to your body as it tells you it needs to be quiet now. You will not fight your way out of this. It is not a test of your character or your will. You need to stop and listen to the only body you will ever have. Let's gather together and share what we're experiencing and put good energy and faith for the brightest outcomes of what we all are going through and what we still are learning. Thank you for listening.